So, you want to be a game tester. You want to play games all day long and get paid for it. You want to kick back, have fun, and let the dollars roll in. You want to be part of a game industry that has next to no crunch culture attached? Then, I'm afraid you don't want to be a game tester. I've been a game tester for 4 years now, and it's a very rewarding career path that I wouldn't trade for anything. However, testers often get overlooked and many assume that it's the easiest job in the world. But that is so contrary to the truth. There is so much more to testing than just playing the game in question. In fact, a lot of days you'll be working on documentation and spreadsheets and not even have a chance to touch the game that you're working on. And getting to the point where game testing is your full-time job can actually be a huge uphill battle. It's a tough gig to get into and make a good living off, but with all the difficulties, it's still a career I cherish. If you haven't been scared off yet and still want to test games more than anything, then stick around. I'll be going into how to break into the industry, as well as what to expect when you do. So without further ado, let's get into Part 1, Breaking In. This is probably what you all want to know right away. You're probably like, just get to the friggin' point, I want to know how to test games. So to break into the industry and finally start your not so lucrative career, you'll most likely need to apply to a position in what I call a testing house. A testing house is a facility often in the middle of absolute nowhere that a testing company has rented to facilitate the testing of multiple companies' games. The beauty of these testing houses is they hire new staff every year to keep up with the demand of certain titles that have yearly releases. Think games like copy-paste sports games or shooters if you're lucky. During the interview, you'll likely be given a test where you need to identify bugs in footage of games you'll probably be familiar with. For example, in my initial test, we were given Fallout 4, Spider-Man, Horizon Zero Dawn, and some random NBA game. Once the test is complete, they'll contact you in a couple weeks telling you if you got the position and that you have about 1 month to move to the middle of nowhere to begin working. Once your orientation begins, you'll probably be told which game you'll be testing after signing an NDA, which will state if you leak information on unannounced or unreleased games, your employment will be terminated immediately, and you could even face legal action from the testing house and the first-party company. With all that, day 1 is complete and you begin testing properly the next day. On your second day, you'll be introduced to the bug database that particular company uses, as well as how bug descriptions are laid out depending on each project. Seems pretty simple so far. Well, it seems that way, but as the workdays go on, you'll be seeing cracks in the company's strategy and the higher-ups will start ramping up the pressure. Let's simplify this or we'll be here for a year. With a little list of pros and cons for working for a testing house. Pros. It's a great source of experience in the gaming industry. You'll get an accurate feel for the game industry's harsh work culture. Depending on your skill set, you may be presented further opportunities to learn more niche kinds of game testing. If you're able to stay at the testing house for at least a year, your employability at other companies will rise exponentially. And possibly the best part, you'll have a direct effect on the quality of a released game, and you can hold your head high. As those pros are good, they are quick and simple, not so much for the cons. Con 1. The pay is abysmal. These testing houses very rarely pay more than minimum wage, and any raise will be extremely small, such as an extra 50 cents an hour, which even goes for senior or lead testers. Con 2. They can and will screw you for pay. What do I mean by this? You will very likely not be paid for a full month's work on your first month, as they will purposely begin your employment in the middle of a month, and the cutoff for said paid hours hits at the end of a month. But unless you have some savings prior to re-employment, you're going to struggle with basic living costs for that whole month. Con number 3. Most testing houses use 0-hour contracts. This means working hours are not guaranteed depending on how many testers are available, and the budget the house has for each game. Con number 4. Layoffs hit suddenly and quickly. As the release date for the testing house's cash cow comes in, they'll want to cut costs to maximize their profits. And the quickest way to do that is cutting away dozens of testers at a time. Con number 5. Bug numbers or leave. If you don't find at least 2 bugs in a day, you will likely be on the cutting room floor. And they don't care about context, they only care about numbers. And con number 6. A very toxic competitive environment is constantly fostered between testers. With a previous point, testers will be scrambling to get bugs into the database, which will cause resentment amongst your co-workers, and can lead to a decline in your mental health. Now, I know there is a lot of negativity in those points, don't get me wrong, but I can provide some tips for keeping your job in the testing house and maximize your employability. Tip number 1. If presented with an opportunity, learn compliance testing. Compliance testing can be an incredibly boring process and doesn't gel well with all testers, but it's a highly desirable skill when looking for better QA jobs. Tip number 2. Ignore the pressures to step on your fellow testers and work together. Almost make a team within the team of reliable testers, and share knowledge, and together not only will you find more issues, but management will likely take note of how well you all work together, and you'll be more likely to keep your job. Tip number 3. Think extremely out of the box when looking for bugs. It sounds obvious, but there are simple things you can do in games to potentially cause a crash and write up some really important issues. Remember, these early stage builds are very unstable and held together with duct tape. Go off a beaten path. Use options that most people wouldn't normally use. Use the worst possible equipment combination, and it'll get results. Be extremely unorthodox, and you'll find very interesting issues. Now, it's not impossible to get hired for a tester position at a more reputable company with no experience, but having knowledge on common testing practices will increase your odds for certain, and with that in mind, Part 2. Types of testing. There are typically 2 types of game testing, that being functional testing and compliance testing that I mentioned earlier. Functional. The kind of testing you would expect. The lead tester will create several test sheets based entirely on the game you're testing, of course, which will likely include things like collectibles, mechanics, and how they interact with each other, making sure every level of the game functions as expected, and making sure the story flows correctly. And when it doesn't, simply write up those issues in the bug database and hopefully it'll be fixed in the next build. Compliance. This testing is based around extremely specific guidelines set out by the first-party companies. These are very necessary to run before your game can be released on any console. For example, let's say you really want to release a game on a console called the Super Duper. You'll have to get the compliance test cases from the owner of said console, let's call it Nintendo, and run each specific test case against your game to make sure each one is a pass. However, the kicker that differs failure from compliance and functional is that if a single compliance test case fails, then you will not be allowed to release your game, and this is not negotiable 99.999% of the time. Let's say Nintendo states in test case 6.9, which states no depictions of alcohol other than gin can be presented in your game. You check your entire 100-hour game and all its optional content, scanning for any signs of other kinds of booze in the game, and after a week of testing, you're finally at the finish line. But the final boss defeated, the final cutscene plays, and the game's boss with their dying breath decides they want a final drink, and breaks out a beer that the devs forgot to remove. Boom. That's it. Game fails, and the developer needs to remove the beer can. A new build needs to be created, and testing needs to begin from the very start of the game, just in case any other non-gin boozes are accidentally placed in the game. I know it sounds like a pain, but that's an extreme example and likely won't happen most of the time. The point is, you need to go through the game with a magnifying glass to each polygon and pixel. There's one thing, of course, that functional and compliance testing have in common, that being bugging and regression. So this is the bread and butter of every game tester, writing up bugs. There is no set way each developer or publisher will want their bugs written up, but there are commonly used bug database software such as Jira or DataHub, and sometimes specific companies have their own dedicated bug databases softwares, like Mojang with its Minecraft-specific database. It's just a matter of being taught how to bug for each company/game, including the layout and if a company has specific labels or codes they like to apply to their titles, which can be very useful for both testers and developers to keep track of the state of a bug. Once you have the cadence of writing bugs down, a lot of the time it'll become muscle memory with how similar bugs end up being. But it is necessary to make sure each bug has its own entry. Don't shove as many bugs as possible into one entry. And now the fun part, regressing your bugs. This essentially means the developers will claim they have fixed an issue in the newest build, and you will have to make sure they have. If they've succeeded in fixing the bug on all consoles, you simply close the bug, or if they haven't, you get to actually the developer, and tell them their fix didn't work. Developers may find this frustrating, but don't take it personally. These games are their babies, and it takes a long time to code. They just need to try again, and you'll need to regress it once more in the next build. Rinse and repeat until the bug is dead and buried. Also, this is a little sidebar, but devs hate bugs being referred to as glitches, so don't do that. And with that, we have covered the very basics of the realities of game testing. Admittedly, at the start there are a lot of cons, but it is an extremely rewarding career path once you put your all into it. And if this hasn't scared you away, I wish you luck in your future projects. If you'd like more in-depth videos on each of the things I've covered today, please let me know in the comments. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and remember to stay sweet and equally salty. Bye bye!